My friends, my dear brothers, my buddies, how are you? I hope you are all doing great and that you're in good spirits. Today, we are not going to talk about trivial things. We are going to talk about something I feel in the depths of my heart, something that sometimes keeps me up at night. Because this story isn't just a success story written in books. It is the silent war itself that I, you, and all of us live through. I have lived this process personally. I have witnessed it dozens of times in those around me. And every time I thought to myself, I wish someone had told me these things much earlier. First level, the invisible ceiling. My grandmother used to keep money inside a shoebox, not because she didn't trust banks, she did, but because she knew she would spend it if it were somewhere she could see it. In the back of the closet, on top of the refrigerator, emergency money. Always there, never growing, never moving. Just sitting in the dark, waiting for something bad to happen. That image was the beginning of my entire financial education. No one sat us down and told us we were poor. No one gave us a book saying this is how you will live with what you have. It was quieter than that. It was how my father's eyebrows would furrow when the car made a sound it hadn't made the day before. It was how my mother would change the subject when the topic of retirement came up. How every conversation about the future eventually hit a wall, an invisible wall, built out of nothing but habit, history, and an unspoken belief that people like you don't end up with more than what they started with. I absorbed this the way children absorb everything, completely, without even knowing it. Money was a source of shame before I was old enough to understand what money even was. The permission slip for the school trip wouldn't get signed because the fee was $12. I would wear the same 3 shirts on rotation and got very good at pretending it was a choice. I learned not to ask for things. Not because my parents were cruel, but because the expression on their faces when I asked was worse than not having the thing itself. That expression taught me more than any classroom ever did. It taught me that wanting more was dangerous. That ambition was something that belonged to others. That the correct posture for someone like me was not to hunger for what I didn't have, but to be grateful for what I did have. And for a long time, a very long time, I believed that. The ceiling was invisible because no one pointed at it. No one needed to point at it. I just kept growing until I hit that ceiling. And then I stopped growing because everyone around me had done the same. I was supposed to do the same. But something was wrong. I could feel it before I could put a name to it. A low-intensity weight in my chest that wouldn't go away. A feeling that the map I was given didn't match the terrain I was standing on. A sense that the rules I was taught were real, just not for everyone. Then one day, something cracked. Second level, the first crack. You are 17, maybe 22. The age doesn't matter. The moment does. You are sitting somewhere unremarkable. A break room, a bus, your childhood bedroom at midnight, with the laptop screen lighting up your face. And you read something, or you see something, or you meet someone, and a single thought enters your mind in a striking, sudden way. These people didn't start with more than me. They just decided that the ceiling wasn't real. This thought is either the best thing that ever happens to you, or the beginning of a very long, very difficult decade. Probably both. Here is what no one tells you about the moment you decide to step out of the script you are handed. It doesn't feel empowering. It doesn't feel like a montage. It feels like vertigo. You've stepped off an edge, and you don't yet know if there is ground below you or just more air. You start reading, obsessively, silently. You don't tell anyone because you already know how it will be received. My best friend tried to start a business 2 years ago, and everyone called him crazy until he quit, then called him wise for quitting. Your environment has a very efficient immune system. It identifies ambition as a foreign object and attacks it. So you stay silent. You read at night. You watch videos with headphones on. You fill a notebook with ideas that feel simultaneously obvious and impossible. You build a private world inside your head. And the gap between that world and the one you actually live in starts to make everything feel a bit surreal. You try your first venture. Maybe it fails in a week. Maybe it limps along for 6 months before dying quietly. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you tried, which already separates you from the 90% of people who will spend their entire lives saying, I should. And I had this idea once. But there is a price for separating yourself. You haven't paid it yet. The invoice is coming. Third level, the struggle that no one posts about. 2 years have passed, maybe 3. Your bank account doesn't reflect the hours you've put in. This is the part that is skipped in every highlight reel. Every how I made my first million video, every LinkedIn post from someone who figured it out and is now selling courses on how to figure it out, they skip this part because this part is ugly and slow and doesn't perform well. This part is you, with a exhaustion that sleep cannot cure. Doing something for the 100th time that still isn't working, while everyone around you has a normal life that is starting to look, if not glamorous, at least restful. Your friends stop inviting you out. Not out of malice, they just stopped expecting you to say yes, and then they stopped asking. You told yourself this was fine. That sacrifice is the price of the goal, and it is. But sacrifice still costs something, even when you choose it. Your family starts asking questions with a certain edge to them. When is this going to turn into something real? Not because they want you to fail, they really don't, but because they are afraid for you. And people who are afraid become impatient. Your mother asks if you can bring some money home. The fact that she offers money you don't have makes the situation much worse, not better. I lived through this. And believe me, in that moment, you feel the entire weight of all your past ventures. You experience a loss. Not a small one. Maybe you put months of savings into something and it doesn't work, and you have to sit with that number. That specific, humiliating number, and try to figure out what it means about you. You don't sleep well for a week. You have a moment, a specific moment at 3 in the morning, where the whole project seems not just difficult, but truly stupid. Where the voice that sounds exactly like every person who ever doubted you becomes very loud and very reasonable. It says, "No one from where you come from has done this. This isn't a coincidence. This is data." You sit with that for a while, then you get up. Not because you are made of something special. Not because you have a mindset that others lack. You get up because the alternative is to go back. And you've spent enough time at the starting point to know you can't live there. The version of you that accepts the ceiling, that version no longer exists. You burned the ground on that side, so you keep going. But things are different now. You are a bit tougher than you used to be, a bit quieter. There are conversations you no longer have with people you love, not because you've grown apart, but because the distance between what is in your head and what they would understand is too wide to be bridged in a single dinner. This loneliness isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It just settles in quietly, like sediment. But something is working. You can feel it before you see it. 4th level, the first sign. It's not a million. Not even close to a million. But it's real, and it's yours. And nothing that came before prepared you for how it would feel. Maybe it's the first month your side income matches your rent. Maybe it's the first time a stranger pays you for something you made. Maybe it's a number in your account that, 2 years ago, would have looked like a typo. Whatever it is, it's specific. And it arrives on an ordinary Tuesday, and you stare at it for longer than makes sense. Then you close the laptop and go to bed. Because there is no one to call. This is what it's like to have your first real win when you are doing this alone. The person you most want to tell is the one who would least understand what the number means. Not for lack of intelligence, but because they don't have the context. They weren't inside the days that produced this. To explain it would require explaining everything. And tonight, you don't have the energy for everything. So, you sit with it silently. You let it be real. You sleep. What changes? For the first time, you believe not just as a performance, but in a real sense that the ceiling is breakable. Before you knew it, intellectually, now you know it in your body. This is different. This is the difference between reading about altitude and actually breathing thin air. What gets worse? The stakes. Because now it's real, which means it can now be lost. So the shape of the fear changes. Before, you were afraid it would never work. Now, you are afraid it will work and then stop. You become protective in a way that approaches paranoia. You don't talk about it, you don't post it. You don't want any energy near it until it is solid enough to withstand being seen. You reinvest everything. You stay uncomfortable on purpose, because comfort is where momentum goes to die. You've learned this now, the hard way. The first win is proof, not the arrival. It is the confirmation that the direction is right, and that needs to be enough. Keep going. 5th level, the crossing. The number becomes real on a Wednesday. Not a dramatic Wednesday. Not a Wednesday with music. You are sitting somewhere ordinary, your car, your kitchen table. A desk that costs too much because you finally allowed yourself to buy a real desk hand. You calculate the numbers as you've done 100 times before. And this time, they clear. 7 figures. When this number is applied to you, to your name, to the account linked to your social security number for the first time, you check it twice. You close it, you open it again. You close it. You thought this moment would feel like a finish line, like the specific release of a breath you've been holding for years. You thought something would happen, a physical sensation from your nervous system saying, "This is it, this is the moment, you did it." Instead, there is silence. This is the part no one warns you about. The deep, disorienting silence of crossing a threshold that none of your ancestors ever crossed. There is no reference for this in your family's vocabulary. Your parents don't have a word for the thing you've just become. The emotional language for this milestone doesn't exist in the house you grew up in. And so, you sit in that silence like someone standing in a room where all the furniture has been removed. You want to call your mother? You call. You talk for 20 minutes. You don't mention the number, not to hide it. You just don't know how to say it. Like a boast, like a separation, like you were standing on one side of a river and she is on the other. Not knowing if telling her helps or just makes the water louder. So, you say, "I'm doing well." You say, "It's good." She says, "Eat something real. Not just whatever is fast." You hang up and sit in the silence for a long time. What does money do immediately? It solves the problems you've had for years and reveals an entirely new set of problems you didn't know existed. You have to make decisions that require knowledge you don't have. Tax structures, asset protection, investment vehicles. You grew up in a house with a coffee can on top of the refrigerator. No one left you a manual for this. You begin to realize that becoming a millionaire is not the end of your financial education, but the beginning of the harder one. And you realize something else? Something that slowly settles in the weeks after the crossing. You are not the same person you were before, but you still come from the same place. And these two things will have to learn to live inside you at the same time. This tension will cost you more than the struggle did. 6th level, the gap. You go home for the holidays, the same house, the same smells, something that was always in the walls. You stopped noticing it when you lived there, but you notice it immediately when you step through the door. The same too-loud television. The same slightly unbalanced table with a folded napkin under one leg. Everything is the same. But now there is a gap. Not between you and the people in this house. You love them with the same intensity you always have, maybe more, because distance makes things clear. The gap is between the life you left and the life you are living. And you can feel it like a change in air pressure. No one talks about it. No one needs to talk about it. You pay for dinner. You say it's nothing. They say it wasn't necessary. You say you wanted to. After that, there is a micro-silence that lasts exactly long enough to be uncomfortable. And then everyone moves on and no one mentions it again. But it happened. You start losing people who aren't leaving. That's the strange part. No one exits your life dramatically. No confrontation. No breakup. Just a gradual drift. Like two boats that were once tied together, and someone is quietly, incrementally loosening the rope. By the time you notice how far you've drifted, the shore where you started is just a shape in the distance. Old friends start treating you differently. Some become quiet around you in a way that feels like self-consciousness. Some become louder, testing, probing, looking for the version of you that would prove you haven't changed. And when they can't find him, they don't know what to do with the version they found instead. A friend, someone you've known since childhood, makes a comment at dinner that lands wrong. Something that looks like a joke but carries the full weight of resentment underneath. You don't press it, he doesn't apologize, you both pretend the moment passed cleanly. After that, you don't call each other as often. You also start losing the people who are leaving. Relationships that couldn't survive the version of you that stopped shrinking. A partnership that made sense when you were at the same altitude and started to buckle once you weren't. Those who loved the version of you that needed saving and didn't know how to love the one who didn't. You mourn these losses silently because you don't have the language for them. You can't post about them. You can't explain, without sounding cruel or arrogant, that success can isolate in the same specific way that failure does. Both leave you sitting alone in a room, wondering if anyone sees you clearly. And then there is the guilt. Guilt, which no one talks about. Not abstract guilt, but something more specific and harder to shake. The guilt of watching your mother still worry about money when you could write a check that would end that worry forever, and not knowing how to do it without changing something irreversible between you. The guilt of growing up, The guilt of surviving something you weren't supposed to survive, you carry it like extra weight. You get used to it. You don't put it down. Seventh level, the weight. There is a version of this story where making it feels like freedom, and it does, truly. You can say yes to things you spent years saying no to. You can sleep without the background radiation of financial dread that hummed beneath everything. For so long that you only noticed it when it went silent. You can help people really help. Not just with advice and intention, but with actual resources, which is the only kind of help that changes things. You can give your children a starting point that is fundamentally different from the one you were given, and that specific thing is worth every year of struggle, every loss, every moment at 3 a.m, every sacrifice. That part is real. But there is a weight that comes with it that freedom doesn't cancel out. You are the first. That means you have no map. No one in your family can tell you how to hold this, how to pass it on, how to make it outlast you. Wealth stops in one generation unless you build the architecture to carry it forward, and no one taught you architecture. You are building the plan and living in the building at the same time. You think about your children, or the children you will have if you don't have them yet. You think about what you want to give them and what you don't want to give them. You want to give them security. You don't want to give them the kind of security that becomes its own prison. The kind that removes all friction, all hunger, all understanding of what things cost. You wanted the foundation without losing the fire? You don't know how to do that yet. You are figuring it out in real time, just as you figured out everything else. Your family sees you differently. There is real chest-swelling pride in it that affects you every time you see it. But there is something else. A subtle shift in the dynamic that no one asked for and no one wanted, but that happened anyway. Just as all the changes happened quietly, irreversibly, without an announcement. You become the person they call. Not just for financial questions, but for everything. Advice, decisions, problems. Somehow, you are now the authority. This is both a strange gift and an impossible responsibility. Because you are still figuring yourself out. You are still new to this. You just look stable from the outside. And in those rare moments when you are completely still before the day makes its demands, in the early morning, when the world is quiet enough to hear yourself think, you feel something that doesn't have a clean name. Not regret, not loneliness, not pride. Something like weight. The weight of being the one who made it. The weight of a family tree that stops bending under a specific pressure once it reaches you. The weight of knowing that everything you build now echoes forward. Not just through your own life, but through lives that don't yet exist. Children and grandchildren who will inherit not just money, but the shape of what is possible. The size of the room they are allowed to imagine for themselves. The size of the ceiling they are allowed to imagine. You changed that. The shoebox is gone. In its place are accounts with numbers your grandmother couldn't have imagined. Structures your fathers didn't know, options your mother was never supposed to have. You didn't just cross a finish line, you moved that line forward. And now you carry that every day. It's not really a burden. It's a responsibility you didn't ask for but wouldn't give back. Because the thing about being the first is this. You didn't just break the ceiling for yourself. You removed that ceiling entirely for everyone who comes after you. They will never know it was there. They will look up and see open sky and think that is just what the sky looks like. Unlimited, open, accessible. They won't know about the years you spent looking at the underside of something most of your family never thought to question. They won't know about the moments at 3 a.m, the failed ventures, the specific loneliness of a milestone with no reference point, the dinner conversations where you couldn't explain what you were carrying. They won't know, and that is exactly right. That is precisely the point. You didn't do this for a trophy. You didn't do this for recognition or validation or for a version of yourself that could say, I told you. So, you did this so that the next person doesn't have to start where you started. Generational wealth is truly this, not a number. A different starting line. You built it, out of nothing. Out of a coffee can and a tight jaw and a family that loved you within the only walls they knew how to build. You took the invisible ceiling and made it the floor. The view from here is not what you imagined. It's heavier, quieter, more real, and you wouldn't trade it for any easier version. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video, my friends. Thanks for sticking around until the end. Man, I really hope you got something out of this. We've got a long journey ahead of us. If you think these videos are helping you out, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Take care.